For about 6 years, I paid a small fortune to own things that mostly just sat there. Look, I want to talk about the toys, the man toys, the boat, the classic car in the garage with the cover on it, the country club you barely golf at anymore, the second place at the beach you visit twice a year, the watch you don't wear. Every successful man I know has got a version of these, and most of them, if they're honest, are bleeding money on things that stopped being fun a while ago. Here's the thing nobody tells you about the toys. The cost isn't buying them. Buying them is the fun part. The cost is keeping them. The keeping goes on, quiet, every single month, long after the thrill of the buying wore off. And in retirement, when the money's not coming in like it used to, that keeping turns from a pleasure into a slow leak you're too proud to look at. I'm going to tell you exactly what my toys really cost me. Not the sticker price, the real price. The dollars, sure, but also the other stuff, the stuff that doesn't show up on a receipt. Because I think a lot of you are hanging on to things right now that are costing you a whole lot more than you've let yourself add up. And Barbara would tell you I was the worst of the bunch. So you're hearing this from a reformed offender. Let me back up, because to understand why I bought all of it, you have to know where I came from. I went broke at 31, I've told you, real broke. And the thing I remember most isn't the bank statements, it's the car. They came and took my car out of the driveway, and I stood at the window with a cup of coffee and watched it go, and I couldn't do a thing about it. So when I made it back, when I built the business and sold it and finally had real money, what do you think I did? I bought cars. Of course I did. I bought the car that kid at the window could only dream about, and then I bought another one. Because every time I looked at them sitting in my garage, some part of me felt like I'd finally beaten that morning, like I'd shown him, shown that scared, broke kid that we made it. That's what the toys really are for a lot of us. They're not transportation. They're not recreation. They're proof. They're a receipt you show yourself to prove the hard years are over. And there's nothing wrong with that until the proof starts costing more than it's worth and you keep paying anyway, because letting it go feels like admitting something. I want you to really sit with that, because it's the whole engine of the thing. A man who grew up with plenty buys a boat because he likes boats. A man who grew up broke or who lost it all and clawed back buys a boat because of what the boat says. It says, I'm not that guy anymore. I'm not the one at the window. And that's a powerful thing to buy. And it's why we overpay. And it's why we hang on long past the point of sense. You're not maintaining a boat. You're maintaining a feeling. And feelings, it turns out, have a slip fee. So let me walk you through the real cost. All of it. There's 5 pieces. The money, and not the money you think. The way the toys turn into chores. The time they eat. The way they keep you stuck as who you used to be. And the big one nobody adds up. What all that money and time wasn't doing instead. Stay with me, because the last one's the one that finally got through to me. The first cost is the one you'd expect. The money. But not the money you think. People think the cost of a boat is the day you buy the boat. It isn't. I had a sport fisher down at the marina. Beautiful thing. You want to know what that boat cost me every single month just to sit in the water and do nothing? The slip was $1,200. Insurance, another few hundred. The maintenance, and a boat is nothing but maintenance. They don't call it a hole in the water you throw money into for no reason. That ran me thousands a year. Bottom paint, the engine work, the guy I paid to keep her clean. Added up, and that boat cost me somewhere around $30,000 a year to own, before I ever untied it from the dock. And here's the kicker. I took her out maybe 6 times a year. You do that math. I was paying about $5,000 per trip on a boat I'd already paid for a thing that was supposed to be fun. And here's what gets me, looking back. If a fella had come up to me and said, Alan, I'll take you out fishing 6 times this year, first class, captain and crew and the whole works, for $5,000 a trip, I'd have laughed him out of the marina. $30,000 for 6 days of fishing? Are you nuts? but that's exactly the deal I'd signed myself up for. I just never said it out loud in those words because the boat was sitting there as one big number I'd already swallowed instead of the per-trip robbery it actually was. And it's not just the boat. The classic car needs its own insurance, its own climate-controlled spot, a mechanic who specializes. The club is dues whether you show up or not. The beach place has taxes and a management fee and a roof that needs doing. Each one's a faucet I left running. And in retirement, nothing's filling the tank back up. It's all just draining. Run that across 3 or 4 toys, and you see how a man who's technically wealthy can still feel squeezed every month and not know why. It's not the groceries. It's the 4 faucets in the garage and the marina and the clubhouse, all left running, all out of sight. The second cost is one I never saw coming. The toys became chores. Here's what happens. You spend that kind of money on a thing, and you feel like you have to use it to justify it. So the boat stops being a joy and becomes an obligation. We should take the boat out this weekend. Should. Not want. Should. Because it's costing us whether we go or not, so we'd better go. You ever notice that? When a fun thing turns into a should, it's not fun anymore. I'd be standing on a beautiful Saturday morning feeling guilty that I wasn't out on a boat I didn't even feel like taking out. The toy I bought for freedom had turned into a boss telling me what to do with my weekend. That's backwards. That's the whole thing gone backwards. And it compounds because then you start going out just to justify the cost, not because you want to. Some of the worst days I ever had on that water were days I dragged myself out there to feel like the money wasn't wasted. So now I'm spending the money and having a lousy time, all to avoid feeling like I wasted the money. If you laid that logic out on paper for a stranger, you'd tell him he'd lost his mind. But that's the toy trap, and smart men fall into it every day. The third cost is the time, and at our age, that's the expensive one. A toy isn't a thing you own, it's a thing you maintain. The classic car ate my Saturdays. There was always something, a part to chase down, a guy to meet, a thing to tune. I told myself I loved tinkering with it, and sometimes I did. But a lot of the time I was just out in the garage because the car needed me to be, fussing over a machine while the actual good years went by outside the garage door. Barbara said something to me once that landed hard. She said, "You don't own that car owns you. It's got you out here every weekend like it's a part-time job you don't get paid for." And she was right, the way she's always right. I'd retired from one job and quietly hired myself into another one, maintaining things, except this one cost me money instead of paying me. And I want to be fair to the car because some of you tinkerers are getting defensive right now. I can feel it. If working on the machine is your joy, if that garage is where you're happiest, then God bless you. That's not a cost. That's a hobby. Keep it forever. The test is honesty. Was I out there because I loved it or because it needed doing and I'd have felt guilty leaving it undone? For me, most weekends it was the guilt. You know the difference in your own gut. Don't let me or anybody tell you which one yours is. The fourth cost is the one that's hard for a man to say out loud. The toys keep you stuck as who you used to be. That boat, those cars, they were trophies for the man who built the business, the hard-charging guy, the guy who needed to prove something. But I'm not that guy anymore. I don't need to prove anything to anybody, including the kid at the window. He got his proof a long time ago. And hanging on to all that hardware was like wearing a younger man's suit. It didn't fit who I actually was now, but I kept it on because taking it off meant admitting that chapter was over. There's a grief in it nobody talks about. Letting go of a toy isn't really about the toy. It's about letting go of the version of yourself that wanted it. And men our age, we don't like doing that. So we keep paying the storage on a self we're not anymore. I had a watch. I'll tell you about the watch because it's small, but it says it all. Big expensive thing I bought the year I sold the business. A real I made it watch. And I wore it maybe a dozen times. because honestly, it wasn't even me. I'm a guy who's happy in a polo shirt. It sat in a drawer in a box for years. But every time I thought about selling it, I couldn't, because selling it felt like selling the proof. A watch I never wore, that I couldn't get rid of because of what it meant. That's not ownership. That's a hostage situation, and I was both the kidnapper and the ransom. The fifth cost is what all that money and time and garage space wasn't doing. The opportunity cost, the bean counters call it. I had, conservatively, a couple $100,000 tied up in things that sat still and lost value while I paid to keep them. Think about what that money could have been doing instead. Not in some investment, I mean in living. The trips Barbara wanted to take, time with the grandkids, just the freedom of not having a single thing that needed me on a Saturday. Every dollar locked in a toy is a dollar that can't be an experience. And experiences don't need insurance. They don't need a slip at the marina. They don't sit in a garage losing value. You buy them once and they pay you back every time you remember them. I had it exactly backwards for years. I owned a lot of things and not very many memories. And here's the cruel part of the timing. The toys are depreciating, and so are we, if we're honest. There's a window where you've still got the health to take the big trip, to get down on the floor with the grandkids, to walk the hill in some old city with your wife. That window is not open forever. So every year I spent 30 grand to keep a boat in the water was a year of that window I let close while I babysat a machine. You can always make more money. I did it twice. Nobody has ever once made more time. So here's what I finally did and how I figured it out. It was Barbara, of course. She wanted to take the whole family to Italy. 3 weeks, everybody, our treat. And I caught myself hesitating over the cost. Me, with a garage full of money sitting still. And she just looked at me and said, "Alan, sell the boat. You'll pay for the whole trip with 1 year of what that thing costs you to do nothing." 1 year of the boat, the whole trip. That's when the math finally hit me in the face. I'd been spending 30 grand a year to feel like I'd made it, when the thing that would actually make me feel like I made it was taking my family to Italy and watching my grandkids see Rome. I sold the boat, I sold one of the cars, I kept the one I actually love and drive. That's the test, by the way. Do you actually use it or do you just own it? And I quit the club I never went to. And you know what I felt? Not loss, relief. Like setting down a suitcase I'd been carrying so long I forgot it was heavy. The morning after the boat sold, it was a Saturday, and I woke up and there was nothing I had to go tend to. No slip to drive down to, no should hanging over the day. Barbara and I had coffee on the patio and decided on a whim to drive up the coast, no machine demanding anything from either of us. And I remember thinking, this is it. This is the freedom I thought I was buying with the boat in the first place. I'd had it backwards the whole time. The freedom wasn't in owning the thing. The freedom was in not having to. So here's where I've landed. A toy is only worth keeping if it's still giving you more than it's taking, more joy than cost, more use than upkeep. And the honest truth is most of our toys cross over at some point. They start taking more than they give, and we don't notice the day it happens, so we just keep paying. The skill in retirement isn't buying the toy. Any fool with a checkbook can buy the toy. The skill is knowing when a thing has stopped serving you and started bossing you, and having the guts to let it go. I'm not telling you to sell everything and live like a monk. If you've got a thing you genuinely love and genuinely use, keep it, enjoy it, you earned it. I kept my car. What I'm telling you is to actually add it up, the slip, the insurance, the upkeep, the time, all of it, and then ask yourself honestly whether you're keeping that thing because it brings you joy or because letting it go means admitting something you're not ready to admit. Let me leave you with this. The most expensive thing I ever owned wasn't the boat or the cars. It was the idea that I needed them to be somebody. That cost me 6 years and a couple $100 grand and a whole lot of Saturdays. And the day I let it go was the day my retirement actually started. Look, I've been broke and I've been rich, and I can tell you the toys don't move the needle on whether you're happy. near as much as you'd think when you're buying them. The kid at the window didn't need a garage full of cars to know he made it. He needed to stop being scared, and you can't buy that. I spent a couple $100,000 finding that out. You can have it for free right here this morning. Let me ask you something, and be honest. What's the toy in your life right now that costs you more than it gives you? The boat, the camper, the bike, the thing in the garage under the cover. Add up what it really costs you to keep it this year, all of it, and put that number in the comments. I'll bet some of those numbers are going to surprise the people who write them. And if this hit home, do me a favor and hit that like button. There's a lot of us hanging on to expensive proof we don't need anymore. And the more this gets around, the more guys might do the math before another year of slip fees goes by. And if you've got a buddy with a boat he never takes out, send him this, lovingly. He'll know who he is. If you want to stick around, go ahead and subscribe. I'm just a guy who spent too much to prove something to a kid in a window, telling you so maybe you'll spend yours on something that loves you back. All right, that's enough out of me. Go take a hard look in your garage.